Helena, welcome back to Forked. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's only been 2 weeks since I've seen you, but it feels like more than 2 weeks. I'm so glad to be back.
A lot's going on
A lot is
every
happening.
week.
Yeah, a lot is happening. Before we jump into all the food, politics, and policy stuff, I want to mention a pretty cool thing that's going to be happening. It's going to be on April 15th, and it's another live taping of the Forked podcast. Now, this is going to be it's going to be down in DC. It's at the GW, George Washington University's Planet Forward Summit on April 15th at 6 p.m. at the Jack Morton Auditorium in Washington, D.C. So if you want to come, you should go onto Eventbrite and reserve yourself a spot right now. I'll be joined there by Sean Sherman, the sous chef, who I will definitely get better at pronouncing all those S's by the time we get onto the stage. He's a James Beard Award-winning chef. He's also a cookbook author, and he's really known for his innovative understanding of indigenous food systems and applying that to fine dining. And our other guest will be Leah Douglas, who is a Reuters correspondent on the Maha Beat, among other things. And she also used to be a staff member here at Fern. I will say one truly sad thing, and that is Helena will not be there. Now, Helena can confirm or deny as if she likes. My understanding is she's on a secret spy mission that she cannot comment on, and she cannot tell us why she'll be there. You don't have to say anything, Helena. Your secrets are safe with me.
Yeah. Mom duties call. I'll say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. So make sure you come and check it out. On our website, there's going to be information to it. It's at www.thefern.org. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So let's do it. So Helena, why don't we jump right in and get on to the double take? Now that, as you know, is something that is happening in the news of food policy and politics. It just kind of makes you do a double take because it's kind of surprising. I think we should start with RFK Jr. going out into the media and saying that the grass loophole, the generally regarded as safe loophole, had been closed. And then almost immediately, everybody in the news say that is not true. Why don't you tell us what happened there?
Yeah. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went on a podcast, as he does often. And I was not familiar with this podcast.
We're going to talk about it in a second. Let's
okay.
put the news. We're going to get to it. I got a lot to say about this podcast. So let's go.
So I think it's a wellness podcast, which tracks a lot of wellness podcasts. So he went on this podcast and he said that the administration had closed the grass loophole. So we've talked about grass before, generally recognized as safe. People will maybe recognize this term. It is essentially the pathway we have that most food chemicals get to market, and it does not require FDA oversight. So there are food chemicals can get on the market without FDA oversight or approval, and this is something that a lot of people do not like. Consumers are really shocked by this, and they want to close the so-called grass loophole. And the administration is moving forward on a rule. There is a proposed rule sitting at the White House for review, where it has been since December. So they are working on this. But you cannot use the past tense because it hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened. All it has to do is get through the White House, get through 1 million lawsuits, and then be implemented. It's just like that.
Actually, more than that. There's more steps than that. He has to get through the White House. They have to propose a rule. Then they have to take comment. Then they have to review those. Then they have to issue a final rule. And then litigation can begin, especially if they violated the procedures for doing so, which is a very common industry attack on these types of things. So long road ahead. Mm-hmm. So to say in past tense, we have done this, is just demonstrably false. And so I think I was the first person who flagged that. Love that the New York Times picked that right up. Love that others did as well. Great. I mean, we all should be listening to these remarks. And, I think I feel like a broken record at this point, but I feel like so much of my job is just flagging the difference between rhetoric and action, and just very clearly delineating where those go apart from each other. And so that was a very clear example. But, Kennedy has made some other claims recently. I mean, in addition to sort of the normal ones that everyone hears all the time that are very much part of his stump speech, he claimed at CPAC that they'd revolutionized military food already, which was
Have they?
Not true.
Well,
No.
is there but, alright, so
They're working it's a
okay,
similar thing.
yeah,
They have, like, some pilots going at certain
yeah.
bases, but, he just very much, exaggerated the scale of that. What
Well
else did he
I
say?
wanna talk about that, though. I wanna talk about that, yeah.
He also didn't correct his interviewee who was saying the administration was removing ingredients from formula, which isn't true. He also said that they were launching cooking classes, which, I mean, maybe they are doing something small, but the administration has completely eliminated SNAP Ed funding, which is by far was the largest source of nutrition education funding, which included cooking classes for SNAP beneficiaries. So I just like so many of these happen constantly that every newsletter every week could just be a roundup of fact checks. I try to
Well, let's back up and
not do that,
let's talk
but
about that
yeah.
for a second, alright? So, the appearance that RFK Jr. made on the on the Bosticks, I should point out, I want everybody out there who listens to our podcast to understand this genuinely heroic thing that Helena does on all of our behalf, right? Whenever
Just doing my job.
when-
Just doing my job.
whenever RFK Jr. is out there on a podcast, she listens to the whole thing. She doesn't listen to
Mhm,
part of it. She's not catching the clips on Instagram. She's not reading the transcript. She listens to the whole thing. And I tried. I made an attempt to do that with
mhm.
the Bosticks podcast interview. I couldn't do it. I made it through 8 minutes and 36 seconds. But I
You
just
can
want,
speed it up if you need to.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But so let's
You can't go faster than 1.3. That's where I draw the line. But
let's talk about this podcast a little bit. So I looked this up, right? So then
okay. I don't know anything about the podcast. You should
I
fill me in.
will tell you what the wisdom of the internet has provided to me. And it is that, okay, so this is the Bostics. There's two of them. There's Lauren and Michael Bostic. They are married. They used to have now the Bostics podcast used to be called something Skinny Confidential Him and Her Show with over
Oh,
200 million downloads, right?
that's
Uh,
a lot of
a
downloads.
lot of downloads. RFK Jr. appeared towards the end of March, and he was sandwiched in between an interview that they did with Valerie Bertinelli of, for me, One Day at a Time fame, and Kyle Richards, who I guess is a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star. Right now, if
Oh.
you so you just this is not like this is not a hardcore political show. I just think it is not. And if you listen to it, what's interesting about it, and it gets to your point about how much time you could spend fact checking RFK Jr., is that he is given an open-ended question. How should we feel in this moment? And just launches into what I think is a fire hose of what the heck are you talking about? Like, now these are things that are not entirely untrue, and a lot of them I've heard in his speeches before. There's the one about the keto diet dramatically reducing the impacts of schizophrenia, which is, this he's said this before, and if you Google that, there's a New York Times headline that pops up right away. Psychiatrist says Kennedy was, quote, not accurate in discussing his keto studies. Food dyes are connected to ADHD. There's some research there, but far from a done deal. Studies in prison, you can find them on the internet, RFK Jr. says. Typical prison food causes, when you switch from typical prison food to real food, violence goes down 40 to 50%. Use of restraints in juvenile facilities goes down 75%. This is within 4 minutes, just
Mhm,
ripping them off, right? And
mhm,
you have to be very dedicated. You have to make a decision, I think, as a journalist or listener, as to
mhm,
whether or not you want to spend your day Googling what he's talking about and trying to unpack it, right?
mhm.
Because there's usually, as they say also about the president, right? There is a kernel of truth in there somewhere. But I don't know that by the end of that kernel, when it pops into popcorn, you got something that's meaningful, right? So bless your heart,
They're
Helena.
yeah,
You know?
they're all different. If you watch Joe Rogan or actually some of these other podcasts like Theo Vaughn,
Yeah.
he, like, tries to fact check in real time, and he'll be like, "Can somebody look this up?" And they, like, Google it, and they'll be like, "Is that true?" And it's, like, this very, like, earnest sort of, like, "Can somebody Google that?" It is it is a full-time job to go through all of those things. What I try to listen for when I'm listening to these podcasts is, like, new hints, so,
Yeah.
like, where are things going? A lot of times Kennedy is really open about, like, timelines or, whatever whether or not those actually happen is another thing, but, like, he'll just offer up, "Oh, we're doing that in April," or, "We're doing that in May," and sometimes that's news to a lot of
everyone,
people,
yeah.
right? They're like, "Oh, I didn't know we were doing that in April." So I think, I can't remember which podcast it was where he said that they're going to define that the government's going to define ultra processed
Okay.
foods in April, which is, right here. Like, so we'll
Is
see
is that
if they do
happening?
that.
Are they ready to do that?
I would be very surprised if that
Probably
happened
not.
in April.
Probably not. Yeah.
With the dietary guidelines, they were saying that was around the corner for like, I don't know, 8 months before it actually came out. So this wouldn't be unprecedented. But yeah, I would be very, very surprised if that comes out in April. Maybe. I don't know. But so he does often drop like crumbs about things that are
Yeah.
coming or whatever. And so that's why I listen to them. And you're welcome.
There was one moment
I listen to all of
I
them.
was
Yeah.
Googling something he'd said, and I still had it on, and it was playing. I wasn't really listening, and, it just sort of jumps into my attention as I'm looking something up, and I hear him say, "Stuffing things in their pie holes," and then I go back to what I was looking for. It must have been quite a conversation. I think the the Bosticks. But yeah, this is just the world we live in. I can't even say it's an
Mhm.
unusual thing. I don't even think it's a particularly right wing thing. You could turn on anything on what used to be MSNBC, which is whatever they call it now. What is it now? They changed the name of
MS Now.
MS now.
Yeah.
It's some of the same. Probably a little more facty, but same level of
I don't
like.
watch
Yeah,
it.
I don't
I
watch
don't
it.
watch any cable news, yeah. I actually think there is something unique, and I don't think it's that it's conservative or, like, right wing,
Yeah,
but this era that we're in, this administration particularly likes podcasts.
they do.
They seem to have sort of free reign on going on these long form, like, it, you would think that, like, there would be more like, gotta worry about what they're gonna say. They don't really seem to have
Not too much. Yeah.
that concern. I mean, there's hours and hours and hours
All
of
right.
Kennedy
I want to
on
move on, but
podcasts, yeah.
but I do want to fact check myself. He didn't say stuffing things in your pie hole. He said, because I wrote this down, stuffing stuff in your pie hole. There you go.
Mhm.
So
Was he talking about
about
yeah,
he
I
was
don't
talking
remember
about
that.
protein. The point he was making. There was
Mhm.
something of a point. Was that he the kinds of food that Americans eat, writ large right now are not only unhealthy, but they are unsatisfying. You don't get as
Mm.
full, so you keep eating. If you eat a protein diet, if you're knocking down steaks one after the other, you might get full, which I guess is that I don't even know if that's true. Like a bag of chips makes you pretty full, so does a steak. Is there something substantively different in the amount of full you feel from junk food as opposed to other foods?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
So, foods that lack, fiber and also, like, foods that are already kind of there's a term sometimes you hear called pre-chewed. They're basically
Woo!
pre-chewed
I like
because they've
that.
already they've been processed, masticated up.
Yeah.
It's kind of like think about a Pringle, like how easy a Pringle is to eat. Like it's a potato that's been broken down into potato bits and then put back together in a chip.
Once
Um,
once you pop, you can't
I mean,
stop. You
they're
can't stop.
delicious,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
good
but,
stuff.
though there is actually quite a bit of research that, like, it's first of all, you eat faster,
Yeah.
like, it's just easier to eat them, so, it's easier to put back more calories before you get some, like, signals from your body, like, "I am full," whereas, like, if you eat a really high fiber first of all, that high fiber food is probably not as, delicious, right?
Yeah.
So you have that first thing, but, yeah, it does, affect your satiety. And so when you talk to people like David Kessler, the former FDA commissioner, this is what he talks about, like the GLP-1s and the processed foods. He's like, the processed foods like took away our satiety signals and then the GLP-1s like give them back because they artificially induce your GLP-1. So
Mhm. I
yes,
want to
there's a lot
commend you.
there.
I want to
There's a lot
commend you
there.
not only on knowing that, having an answer, but the pronunciation of satiety. That's very good. I would have thought, I see that word. That's not a word you hear out loud often. It's really you
Really?
speak.
Oh, okay.
Well, people write it like, but I
Mm.
would have. I don't know that I've ever heard it. I would have said
Well,
satiety. Maybe I'm not
well, there you
sure.
go.
All right.
Now you know
All right.
satiety.
So
A key topic to understand.
so moving on to forks and knives. That's our next segment, and that is what we consider to be the main meal, the most important thing that's happening in the food policy and politics world right now. And if you're like us, Helena, you're down in DC, I'm up here in the media here in New York. One of the things that's on a lot of people's minds is the midterms. Now they are
Mhm.
coming. They're not here yet. That's not till November, but there is a lot of discussion taking place, I think, in the offices of the legacy and non-legacy media right now about what will the impact be on the midterms of Maha. So why don't you? What's the thing in here? What have you heard about this that might be worth us chit chatting about?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have brought up, MAHA voters and sort of this we've talked so much about this marriage between MAGA and MAHA that's been under strain,
Yeah,
particularly over glyphosate, which we've talked about. So there's a lot of strain within this alliance, but at the same time, we have the midterms looming, and everyone's looking, going, is this going to be a factor? Like either dissatisfaction with MAHA or can Republicans keep MAHA? Does that help them in November? Because they're facing a pretty tough. They're some pretty tough headwinds, like deeply unpopular war. Food prices are not great. Gas prices are not great. Healthcare prices are disaster. So not like the vibes are not good for keeping control of Congress. So I think right now we're seeing so much interest, and there's a bunch of polls. So
yeah,
like Politico had a poll, there was an Annenberg poll, there was we're going to talk about the Navigator research looking specifically at actual like battleground voters.
yeah.
And there's some interesting things coming out. I mean, I think Maha voters um, are getting attention because there's increasing recognition that they really played an important role in electing Trump in 2024.
I, I think one of the
Yeah.
things that stood out for me, I haven't seen all of this research, but I looked at some of it. There's an interesting, I don't know what to call it. Contradiction may not be the right word, but what we see in a lot of the polling is that among Maha Maha interested voters, whether they are affirmatively part of a Maha movement, is to be discussed. But Maha people who support Maha issues, they are not happy with the performance of President Trump, and they're not happy with the performance of RFK Jr., but they are happy about Maha, right? And it's a I'm curious what you think about it, because I don't know that makes much sense, because I mean RFK Jr. created Maha, right, and Trump put him in place to do it.
Well, I think what I've taken away, particularly from I think it was the Annenberg poll. There's been so many, but like people should go read all of them. There's some really interesting insights. I think one of the takeaways from I think it was Annenberg was that Maha as an idea, whatever people take that to mean, is much more popular than Trump or Kennedy, and so. And this, I guess, kind of tracks when you think about how well some of these issues poll like across party lines. But Kennedy's underwater on job performance, like 12 percentage points. I mean, it's like he is not a popular figure writ large. I think he's popular within like the Maha
He is a messianic. He
diehards.
remains a messianic figure among the actual Maha people. Yeah,
Yes.
no
Yeah.
question about that.
But if you ask like likely voters, like how is Kennedy's job performance, it's not good. Like, so he doesn't poll well. So it's interesting. Like Maha seems to have this appeal that goes much broader than Kennedy, and particularly much broader than some of the more controversial things like vaccines, and all the criticism and all the work there, which, by the way, a federal court has basically blocked all of his changes to
Well, the
like the
vaccine stuff
childhood
though,
vaccine schedule,
couldn't
and
some of
they've pulled
that,
back from that.
but couldn't the
Yeah,
dissatisfaction be about that too, right?
it
Like
could be. Oh
that
yeah,
people are
because this all
dissatisfied.
swims together.
Well, but
Yeah.
no, but I mean that people could be dissatisfied. So, all right, you and me might think, hey, the voters are rejecting RFK Jr. and Trump because of what they're trying to do to vaccines. But it could also be some of these voters are rejecting Trump and RFK Jr. because they're not doing enough to undermine vaccines.
Potentially, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, if you look at Politico had a poll, that found I was just gonna pull it up, Trump voters are divided on Maha progress, this just came out, and they found that, like, even Trump voters are split almost evenly on whether or not they think enough has been done, so 41% of Trump 2024 voters think, Trump hasn't done enough to basically implement the Maha agenda. Then if you look at self-identified Maha supporters, an even greater percentage of those voters do not think they've done enough. 47% think that they haven't done enough. And so, they don't split that out, food versus vaccines. So I don't know, but
The,
it shows that there's some real dissatisfaction in like what's been done and what's been communicated. And I would be so curious to see how much of that is from some of this glyphosate fallout, because I think that has gotten a ton of attention on social. So
For sure.
a lot of
Although
people get their news there now. So
that's absolutely true. I think the glyphosate decision, that's a big deal. The executive order is a big deal. But I think if you look at some of the polling, when they look at, like, this is the one from what was it? Was it Navigator?
Navigator.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Navigator. Again, they're only looking at, likely voters in what they define as
Like
battleground.
swing districts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, how they define that. I mean, I didn't get deeply enough into the sausage making to see how they identified 62 congressional districts as battlegrounds, along with the senatorial races. But take it at least with lots and lots of grains of salt and beef tallow and whatever you need to put in it to let me talk about it. But the top concern for these voters is not the glyphosate stuff. It is snap cuts. They did not like cutting food stamps for low income people. That seems to be up there as a biggie. And then if you look at it's like the pesticides are there, but it's second, right? And then third is corruption that they're defining in some way with the Trump administration putting people in charge of these processes that they don't think are trustworthy. Then you get to things like cutting school lunches, not taking on big food, cutting the inspection people, so doging different parts of the government. It takes a while to even get down to tariffs or immigration or farmers. There's a few of them don't even like consolidation. They don't like mergers, all that kind of stuff. And bottom of the concerns of these voters is worker safety. But I mean, I think it's noteworthy that those snap cuts are still up there as a concern for people, because one of the things that is a sort of baseline assumption when we talk about voters is that they have very short memories, right? So that you
Mhm.
could do something now and not have to worry, not pay the price for it in November. But and it's not November, but they're still, apparently, if the polling is correct, they're paying a price on the snap cuts.
Yeah, I did find that interesting. And if you look at the research that they did on like overall what these swing voters want Congress to be focused
Yeah.
on, the number one was healthcare costs, and
Yeah.
the number two was food safety, even above food affordability,
That's
which is like
crazy. I don't know what that means. Tell me what that means,
surprising.
Helena.
I don't know. I don't know. And I mean, one poll is just a poll. Like it's
Yeah.
a snapshot, right? Like I want to see more research, but um what I wondered when I saw that was like, like what are people thinking when they think of food safety? Are they wrapping all of this into it, right? It's, they're thinking about the infant formula situation, they're thinking about recalls, maybe they're also thinking about all this food chem stuff. So like
Or
all the
just ultra
concerns about
processed
like are,
food.
are all getting together. Yeah, I don't know. So maybe that's kind of all getting lumped together,
Yeah.
but it was really pretty high. And like I do think that follows this like overall trend I've seen in like all the polling I've looked at in the last like year or 18 months, which is that you're seeing increasing agreement across both Republican, Democrat, and independent voters that they want to see government more involved in things like, you know, regulating the food supply. Like it's just a theme that you see. It's like a surprisingly high numbers of support across Republican voters too. So maybe some of that is coming through. That like they're tired of seeing these headlines about microplastics and health concerns, or ultra processed foods and health concerns, or pesticides and like links to workers being exposed to them and having higher rates of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, or whatever the headline is. I think there's this like general grassroots feeling of like something's not right here and maybe the government needs to be more involved. That's of course not what we're getting with this administration. We're getting
We're getting
a
vibes.
deregulatory, well, we're getting, yeah, a straight up actively
Yeah.
deregulatory approach at EPA. And so I don't know how much longer like that.
I think it's
I don't
really
know how much
interesting.
that's broken through, but, like, definitely some of the loudest Maha voices, Alex Clark, Zen Honeycutt, Kelly Ryerson, these people who are very loud on social have been really bashing the administration over their approach at EPA, so
I
and they're having a big rally at
Yeah.
the Supreme Court April 27th, so really interesting to see who shows up for that.
I mean, there are a lot of things that are interesting that to me, but like this sort of generalized sense that there's something wrong with our food system. I agree with you that I think that cuts across the political spectrum and geographic boundaries. What I also think is interesting, and I don't have evidence for this, but I think that the average American still goes into the grocery store right now and buys whatever they want and they don't think about safety. I think they think it's safe to go into the store and buy an apple or buy a carton of milk. Yeah,
Well, you have to.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. Like, you have to just have trust in that or you can't eat. I think about that a lot. I've covered food safety for so long, and, like, every time I see my, like, my little one is, my youngest is not quite 2, and when she's eating, like, fresh berries or whatever, produce usually is when I think of it. I'm just like, how much trust I have in that supplier in Mexico or wherever, that they use clean water, that they had, like, very stringent food safety protocols for, like, the whole operation, and then that it was shipped. I mean, just the level of trust all the way through is really high. Like, you have to, yeah, the number of people and entities and government institutions and everything in between that has to be trusted is pretty remarkable. But, people want assurances. They don't want to see these headlines.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is interesting about it is that, like, if you were to read, so as those of you listening to the show know, I'm the editor in chief of the Food and Environment Reporting Network. We're a nonprofit news organization. We do all kinds of journalism beyond just this podcast, investigations, reporting, all about the food system, right? And if you were to look in our reports, the reports that I provide to our institutional funders, our email newsletters, all the things where I'm explaining Fern to people. One of the key things I say is that Americans have increasingly begun to define themselves politically, socially, culturally through their understanding of food, right? So when we talk about this lack of trust and lack of concern about food safety, and then we say, but everybody still trusts the food that they eat. I think it's getting at that way of defining ourselves in all of these ways. Food is just much more important in American society than it was, not necessarily in how we put it into our bodies, but what we think about it. And I think that's reflected in some of the polling, and I think it may be reflected at the polls when people go and vote in midterms.
Yeah, and I mean, this has been brewing for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
Like, you can go back to, the 70s and all the critiques about the food system and all the back to land people and, lots of thinkers. And then, in more recent times, you get Eric Schlosser and you get Michael Pollan, you get Mary Nessel, like all of these critiques and then all the documentaries. And I mean, that eventually creates like a completely mainstream narrative of concern about the status quo. And I think that's where we are, that, like, yeah, and now it's very much embedded on the right too. So it's new for sure. It's a new American narrative that's like really taken hold. Yeah.
Absolutely. And those, for those Democratic thinkers out there, and we've done some coverage about this at Fern, and I know you've written about it in your newsletter. The Democrats need to get on the stick about these issues, right?
Well,
Like,
it's just weird. It's just weird how little you hear. Yeah, Jane Black had a great story.
with
Where
Fern, Fern in the
Yeah,
New
yeah.
Republic, Fern in the New
Yeah, and
Republic. Yeah.
I was gonna blank on where it was published. Just talking, and she got some good quotes in there from leaders. There's just so much hesitance to even touch this stuff right now because a lot of Democrats just don't want to work with Kennedy in any way, shape, or form. They don't work with this administration in any way, shape, or form. And so it's created this like very noticeable vacuum. Like, Democrats are not leaning in on these issues. And I don't know, there'd have to be some message or some alternative or some agenda or something there to like talk about. But I don't know. I haven't seen much of anything.
Well,
So,
when you put it in those terms, and you're like, well, the solution is to work with RFK Jr. on these issues. I guess maybe the stick is going to be okay by itself without them for a while because they don't want to do that. That's not going to pay off for them well.
well, but like even going into the midterms, like what's the Democrats' message on this
Now
stuff?
that now that's a good point.
Like,
Yeah.
like is your average? I mean, is your average, congressional candidate going to be leaning in on this stuff? And it's also really hard because like Congress isn't doing anything on this stuff. So what are you running on? Are you running on that like Congress is going to do something? I mean, I don't know. It's a bit of a conundrum. Like, certainly Congress could be working on these things. Like, there's
I think
a
it's
number of things they could
yeah.
do, but like those are I'm not seeing any active debates on those.
I'm sure you're going to be following this issue. I know that with us at Fern, we're definitely following this issue. We're going to be putting together stories about this very subject now and all the way up to November. It's our way of understanding what's going to be happening in the country, and these elections are a big deal. This is how we situate ourselves as nonprofit journalists. We look at what's happening on these things. So
Mhm.
I think, unless you have more you'd like to say, I think we should move on to our next thing. It's the good vibe, right? And that's something in the food system and the food politics and policy world that we can take some hope from. I don't know if this qualifies, right? Maybe this is just me being a bit curmudgeonly that, Casey Means and her, appointment to be the Surgeon General of the Surgeon General of the United States seems to be getting, as my grandfather used to put it, the hook. And that's not slicing. That's like the vaudeville hook where they yank you off the stage, right? Uh,
Well, it seemed like that for a minute,
yeah.
but I don't know
Oh,
if you saw last
no,
night.
no, I did not. I
So
thought
we're
that,
recording
yeah.
we're recording this a week, so things could change,
All
right?
right.
So, but that looked to be the case because Trump made a comment that was something like, "Well, I could pull her," basically.
People are saying that maybe we should cook. Some people
So,
think we should pull her.
it definitely opened that door, but then, Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary for the White House, gave a statement to the Washington Post pretty recently, as of when we're recording this, that said, like, was like very confirming, like, we're sticking with her, we support her, we want Congress to confirm her. But she's in real trouble in the Senate. There's been some reporting that there's just not a clear path for her to even get out of committee. So
Because of vaccines, right? Which is an interesting thing to think through, right? Because she's not overtly anti-vaccine like RFK
yeah,
Jr., but she's kind of a vaccine underminer, I think, was
I
how I'd
don't
put it.
I don't know enough about the concerns of each individual, but I think definitely for Murkowski um and Cassidy, those are top of mind things that like
And Collins too, right?
it's
In Maine, Susan
so
Collins.
I don't know that Collins brought up fact I'm trying to remember. She remember was not happy with her psychedelic use
I
and
was gonna bring that up.
promotion.
Would love it if she
So
goes down because of psychedelic mushrooms. That would be pretty funny to me.
yeah, so I don't know,
Yeah,
right? Like there's a lot of these things where they seem like they're not gonna go, and
yeah,
then somehow some deal is struck and they go. So, like, we do not know what's gonna happen here, but, I think it's interesting that, like, Maha's facing a little more resistance generally on the Hill. Like, that's what I'm taking from it. I don't know specifically what it is because she I think she pledged pretty clearly to not be, like, overtly critical of vaccines as Surgeon General, but, like, in a public health emergency, would she be the nation's doctor urging everyone to get whatever the vaccine was that was needed in that
no,
emergency? Like, I think that's where
yeah.
the concern is, and so I don't know what's gonna happen there, but there is and, it's not my job to tell people what to think about this nomination, but I think the concerns that Republicans are raising on her nomination are sort of like proxy. They're sort of a temperature check
Yeah.
on like where Maha stands on the Hill generally. And I think there's a lot more hesitancy now.
Well, that's
So,
interesting
and
because
I mean these the measles cases, I think are weighing on a lot of lawmakers. Like they're looking at these, the resurgence of measles in this country and going, you know, I don't know that that's the direction we want to go. So,
I think it's interesting because you're saying it's a test of Maha's power on the Hill, and I think that's true. But you could also connect that to the polling we saw, where voters, they find that the Maha movement itself, whatever its goals are, they like that, but they don't like RFK Jr. and they don't like Trump. And the fact is, not all of the Maha movement likes Casey Means, right? She is not sufficiently anti-vax for them, and
what? So that's yeah. So there's definitely a fringe element
yeah.
within the anti-vax prong of Maha. They do not like the Mean siblings at all. Like they really think there's like a conspiracy there, and like I'm not touching that because it seems bonkers. Like I don't know where that is all coming from. There is a contingent that does not like her, but I think broadly Casey Means is very popular within Maha. But that's not necessarily enough to get through Senate
Right. By the way, you
confirmation.
said
So
anti-vax prong, which I think is a fair way to conceive it. But given the logo that we have on Forked, which is a fork, it should be the anti-vax tine, I think. So we should go for
I
that.
don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you do see a pretty significant pivot away from they're really not talking about vaccines. They're really not leaning into that. And I think that's very clearly a political decision going into the midterms.
All right.
So
Well, I think, do you have something you would
I
like
don't have
to
a
say?
good
No, no
vibes
good
other
vibes.
than it's nice out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Finally,
yeah,
it's
today
nice.
for
It's
those
not
of you out
cold.
there, we're taping this on March 31st. It is a beautiful day here in Brooklyn where I live. Apparently it's nice in DC too. I think we should leave then on a note of good weather. Helena, before we go though, why don't you tell us about that newsletter of yours? I hear it's pretty good.
Yeah, so if you are not getting Food Fix, my weekly newsletter, which you can get for free, go to foodfix.co and get on the list. Um, People really like it. It's informative. I'm trying my best to keep everyone up to speed on what's going on. There's a lot. So
You're doing a very good job. I really like
thank you.
Food Fix. You guys should all go check it out. Helena, thank you so much. I always leave these conversations knowing a lot more than I did than I started. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad, but I do appreciate it. And I will see you in a couple weeks.
We'll see you soon. All right, bye.